Where did the name Killcliff come from? There's like some sort of secret. It's like the Coca-Cola recipe.
So what I'll tell you is that the best thing about the name of Killcliff, outside of it sounding pretty cool and pretty aggressive and looking really good on a can, is listening to customers talk about what they think it means.
I've heard so many theories.
I don't really want to destroy that mystique.
Well, then don't. Yeah. You have to go on the dark web to figure it out. Like the deep web, that's where the theories live. I don't know. I've heard all kinds of stuff. I've been involved with you guys on and off for years, and I've heard all kinds of stories that there was a guy, Cliff, who was an early investor, or there was an early employee, or that Todd had a beef with a guy named Cliff, and it was like a little FU to him. I've heard all kinds of wild stories.
Let me tell you, I'll tell you this about it, and I'm going to leave that alone and let people just guess. But I told the story to this guy who runs a $1 billion franchise, and he started it, and he was looking at maybe extending his product portfolio to include CBD beverages, and he wanted to talk to us. So I spoke with him, and I told him the story just straightforward as I understand it, and he almost choked. He was laughing so hard. So let's just say we have good humor and like to have fun, and there's an element of that in everything we do. We're a fun brand. We always will be a fun brand. And the story about Killcliff is really, really fun. But right now, I love just hearing people guess.
There is some fun.
Right there, man.
Maybe that's how you guys have been successful in content. It's just getting people to throw their wild off the wall theories. And I don't know if you know this, but the internet is full of people that have wild off the wall theories.
I know.
Yeah.
I honestly think we don't use the internet enough. We should use it more.
You heard it here first, folks. Part of the reason I wanted to have you on is I think your story, just the little parts that I know about it, are pretty fascinating. How you went from team guy into the corporate world, and then found yourself, and then you came on as the chief sales officer for Killcliff, right?
Yeah, back in 2018.
And then you were the acting president, and now you're sitting in the CEO role, man. I think, and there's so much more to dissect about that journey. I was pretty struck by a couple data points, and I looked in here of what you've been able to do at the helm of the company. And I know as in true team guy fashion, you won't take credit for everything, but just what the company's done under with you said helping just steer the boat. When you were still in the acting president role, even coming into the CEO role, you saw a 416% increase in new customer acquisitions online. E-commerce transactions were up 384%. Brand loyalty skyrocketed to 50% of online customers purchasing more than once. Recurring subscriptions now were close to 50% of the company's revenue. In the retail space, points of distribution increased by 155%. The CBD beverage sales went up by 515% in 2020. Those are, for business people that are listening, when you say 384%, 416%, 155%, 515%, those are incredible numbers for anybody who's ever tried to create a unicorn as a company, right? And I want to just kind of pull on that thread a little bit for two reasons. One is I want to talk about what was the secret to, or the secrets to be able to do that. And then also anybody who's run a company knows there's some negative consequences that come with very rapid growth. And I say negative consequences, just there's additional challenges that come with having to manage that. So the first piece is like, what led to that? Was it a radical departure from what you've been doing? Was it going back to the drawing board and throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks? What allowed you to get to that kind of point with those kind of numbers?
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So the history, you got to look at the history of the business a little bit, right? So,
sure.
So Todd started the company in 2011, and from 2011 to 2015, 16, the company was dramatic, like rapid growth, like from zero to, whatever. I mean, it was like, I think we eclipsed we were right around the top 100 or 110 in the Inc. 5000. So it was a kind of a company where Todd went into extreme risk. He created this idea and a product and a narrative and a brand, and he bought all this product, like 8,000 cases, and put it in his garage, like that type of thing. And then he went door to door and started selling it. So the early phase of Killcliff was very entrepreneurial, very this is who we are. We're going to go out and crush it. And it was really hard, but they hit lightning in a bottle with the CrossFit community in the early days, and effectively the first few years, there was a real takeoff in CrossFit that started 2010, 11 that lasted for probably 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And they were the drink of CrossFit, and that's what really got Kill Cliff like kicking. And then there was a lot of competition and money that came in, all this stuff. And what happens with most companies when they bring in private investment is, and Kill Cliff brought in private investment, I think in 15 or 16, is there's a natural transition. There's investors bring with them people that are experts in certain areas. They bring people they've used in the past in different companies. And so there was kind of a natural transition of, Todd, he left the day-to-day leadership role and took a board seat. He's a serial entrepreneur, so he had like 3 other companies he was incubating at the same time.
Yeah.
And they brought in a General Mills guy to be the CEO, who was like a traditional food and beverage, like career food and beverage type guy.
Yeah.
And then they started bringing in these other pieces. And there, at that point, there was a lot of changes to the brand that were hitting at the same time as the headwind of the audience that they were in was starting to hit them from being saturated, right? They were saturated in this one audience that wasn't very scalable beyond a certain point where they Kill Cliff already had the leadership position.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a really well-defined strategy to broaden the audience while still remaining authentic. And so when investors got involved in the business and started moving in different directions, the company lost a little bit of that leadership Todd initially brought to the business. It lost a little bit of the authenticity, the direction, the focus, and the focus shifted away from what the company was really good at. The company in the early days was really good at selling online and then selling to these independent wholesalers directly. And the company kind of transitioned to more of a traditional retail play. Anybody who's done that knows retail is really, really, really expensive. The problem is it's a really expensive play, but if you're not going to put the funding behind it, your likelihood of being successful is very, very slim. So anyway, long story short is the company lost its way for a few years. And so Todd, I was working in software. I was doing a software startup for a company that was funded by the intelligence community, by InQtel, their fund. And it was really cool. And I've been doing it for a while. And I got to the point where there was atrophy. Like I wasn't excited anymore. And I needed a new project. And I'd known Todd since the SEAL team. So I knew, we're both in Atlanta. I'm like, hey man, if I can help you guys out, let me know. And it was only a few months before I was engaged as a consultant by the CEO. And I tried to help him look at some of the stuff they were doing from a sales side differently. And he hired me. At the time, I didn't anticipate that I was going to have a job with Kill Cliff. I was just looking. I was at that point where I was, you get in your career where you start questioning, like, do I want to do what I'm doing? Is it aligned?
Yeah.
Am I happy? And the answer of a lot of those things at the time was no. And as a guy who's a former SEAL that loves the community, a company giving back is interesting to me. As a guy who does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to stay in shape, a company that's athletically based is interesting to me. So it was a massive departure from what I was doing, but I was interested in the challenge. So I took that on. So the company had basically waffled for a few years. Like it kind of had shot up to this high revenue number and then started to decay. And so when I got in and I looked at it and I started calling buddies from the teams, seeing if they'd help us out, I realized that we'd gotten away from our core community a little bit. And I also realized that
you mean like a target audience, or you mean like the community internally?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like some of the changes in the brand kind of lost their luster with the guys that they're most important to us. And so that's what I realized. I realized that I had friends that would, help me out all day long, but they weren't as excited about where the brand was at Kill Cliff. So I knew I come into a business, at a macro scale, I say, do we have a market problem, a brand problem, or do we have an execution problem? And we had a little bit of both, to be honest with you, but I put my heart and soul into the brand. I'm like, this is the issue we need to attack. What we did is that with the guidance of investors, they were looking for a bigger beverage play out of it. Is the brand, it really started to chase customers instead of like having customers come to us for who we were. And there were decisions made in the packaging and the route to market and things like that were not really aligned with the brand, where the brand should be. So when I got involved, I changed all that. I repackaged all the products. I changed our go-to-market strategy. I went back to what we were good at. I went back to selling online as a primary focus. I went back to digital marketing versus sampling and retailers, right? Because digital marketing is ultimately scalable. Sampling is really expensive, and it's kind of a crapshoot on whether you actually get anything out of it. There were lots of different things I changed. I streamlined and changed our approach to going to market, and I did it in a way that was most scalable and most measurable from like a data perspective. You could actually see it and understand if something was working or not working. And I also went brand first. That what had happened in the company with the transition is the company was always brand first. They said Killcliff on the can. Investors got several different groups of investors got involved. The next thing you know, you couldn't even see the Killcliff on the can anymore. It just said a big recover or a big ignite, and didn't really like the brand was disappearing. And some of the language that was being used to present the brand, like "kill the quit," was the tagline for a while. The tagline when SEALs were running the company was "test positive for awesome." The tagline when it
really
it was "test positive for awesome." The tagline when investors were running the company was "kill the quit." Which one's more authentically a SEAL thing to say?
Yeah.
Test positive, right?
For sure. So it's clever. It's tongue in cheek.
It is. And it's become even more like relevant in recent days. In early days, it was there was a lot of people who didn't like it. A lot of civilians, a lot of military guys love it. So anyway, I mean, it's kind of a long-winded story, but what I did is I went back to like the test positive for awesome idea. Like, all right, this isn't kill the quit. I would never say kill the quit as a SEAL. Like, to me, that's kind of lame. So, but I would say test positive for awesome all day long. You can imagine a dude, mom drugs, test positive for awesome, right? Like, you can imagine that, but no one's going to say kill the quit. So I took issue with it. So I went back and I said, we're going to make a huge Killcliff and put it right back on the package, center of the package. Yeah. And I also had to change the products because the execution on the products just wasn't good. Like the Ignite product when we first launched it was really almost a heavy pre-workout taste, and it wasn't a very appealing taste to people who aren't into like really heavy pre-workouts. So we made more of a generalizable flavor. So I changed the flavor and ingredient profile. It became more of a hydration product with caffeine that tastes really good that you can chug. So I did some changes. I made changes to the product. I made changes to the packaging. I made changes to the go-to-market strategy. We're going to sell online first and foremost. And if we do that well, all boats are going to rise. Which is, by the way, this is like pre-coronavirus. So this is very, very much a departure from traditional consumer packaged goods. That's not the way they think. For them, it's all about retail all day long. And I said, if we go retail, we're going to lose all of our money, and we don't have enough money to execute in retail at scale. And if we do that, we won't be able to support the community that we come from, the Navy SEAL Foundation. So we have.
Let me ask you. Yeah. Forgive me for interrupting. I want to ask this. So everything. There's two parts that are really fascinating to me, and just in what you said so far. And one is that you made a bunch of very bold decisions that were a radical departure, not only from what the traditional industry does, but what you guys had been doing. So I want to ask, when you have investors and you have people in the company and they're like, well, John, that's not the way we've always done it, or that's not the way the company is, or the investors are like, why would you depart from tried and true what everybody else is doing? How do you make bold decisions? I think there's a lot of really cool pieces that we could dissect from that about what your thought process was, what kind of resistance you met, and then like just how do you get people to become advocates for very bold decisions that they're like, man, John's going to torpedo this company, or whatever you might be facing.
Well, there was what I had going for me was there was several years of like declining revenue instead of increasing revenue, and it was actually during a period when everything about the business had been changed by investors. So I had that proof point really helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
And then, and this is something that I've not always been the best at, and I've learned through a lot of hard knocks. Like, there's times when you just go rogue and do it. It's the SEAL mentality. I'm going to ask for forgiveness and not permission because it's the right thing to do. And when that pays off, everybody's happy and they celebrate you. But when you get it wrong, it is the worst thing in the world. And I've got it wrong a whole bunch, and it sucks. So you have to create alignment with the right people on your board, the right people that invest in the company, because ultimately, especially if you're spending their money, man, you have to take that serious. But in my situation, having coming in as a team guy, where there hadn't been a team guy in there for a few years, well, actually, in that role in a few years, there had been another team guy in the brand, but he wasn't in that role. He was not empowered to make decisions fairly. So when I came in and I had been empowered to make decisions, I had a degree of credibility and authenticity, and I had proof points. And a lot of it is proof points, like it's proof of concept.
Sure.
Look, I did this test here, and this test is bearing fruit, and here's why. I did a test. I interviewed all these customers. I found this out. Here's the data point. You kind of build evidence. You get data and you assess it and you present it to support your case. You have to create alignment with the investors to pull these things off. Sometimes you just have to go rogue to do the right thing. And there's not a scripted manual for how to do it. I got very lucky on some of it. But again, there was also a level when I came in the business, to be honest, there was a level of investor fatigue because they had tried a bunch of things that were tried and true for them that didn't work.
Okay.
And I think at the time there was a legitimate discussion of, maybe this brand can't succeed and we just need to pull chalk. So I got fatigued investors who had tried a bunch of things that didn't work, who were kind of out of ideas. And I came in with like breath of fresh air, new ideas, let's be bold, try new things. And they to their credit, they kind of let me run with it.
So there's it's interesting because what I hear you saying is there's a little bit of an opportunist, like seeing an opportunity, or if not, helping them understand that there's an opportunity to make bold decisions because what we're doing is not working.
Right.
I think what you started out with was we had been declining sales. So anybody who resisted, well, what do you think's working about what we're currently doing because it's not, right?
Right. So there are three things now I think about it where I really leaned in and made some bold maneuvers that they were probably worried about, but that paid off really, really well for us. The first thing I did is I focused on the brand. I brought the brand back. I changed the packaging. I even changed the products a little bit to be better, right? That's the first thing I did, and I did them all simultaneously. So it wasn't like a order executive thing. Is like I did this all together at the same time. So I changed the packaging and I changed the drinks that I thought were underperforming. Two is I looked at the business objectively and I said, okay, Killcliff has this amazing initial product that we've had for a decade. That it's kind of like it's a nascent category, but it's still a nascent category. And I looked at it and said, what incremental categories can we go into that our customers are consuming products today, but they're not consuming our products? And so I innovated in two categories where we had no products. One of them was our energy drink, where I reformatted that. I basically redeveloped that and made it really, really good. Whereas before it was the properties are great, but it just wasn't there for consumers on the taste side and on the packaging side. So I changed that. The other thing is I leaned forward into the CBD industry and created CBD drink. And we were like the first guys really of a brand our size and scale to come out with a product in that category. And we're still a market leader in that category. Depending on what you look at, we're either number one or number two by market share in America. So I did those two things. And then the third thing I did, which was consistent with the first two, which no one in the history of the company ever had the guts to do, is I took the Band-Aid off the wound on CrossFit. I love CrossFit. We're going to support CrossFit all day long. I have a lot of respect for those guys, but we had to broaden our audience. Like we kind of were CrossFit got to a point where there's so many product companies coming in and some with way deeper pockets that competing there became, and it wasn't really scalable because it's a lot of mom and pop stores all over America. It's not like you can get a distributor and hit 200 outlets. You're shipping directly to them. It was very difficult. There was a lot of hand holding. And I ended up automating that business, which is really cool. And that no one was doing that when I did that. I had 12 reps in the field that I turned into one person with automation. And so I did that as well. So those were all really big things. But with CrossFit, what I did is I said, okay, well, we want to serve CrossFit, but if we only serve CrossFit, we're not going to grow. And we have these new products we can try to sell in the CrossFit, and that could be incremental in CrossFit community. But what we need to do is we need to really kind of broaden our audience without sacrificing our authenticity and still being aligned with a CrossFit consumer. So I moved our aperture and focused on the military affinity audience, which is, that's a multi-billion-dollar audience. It's massive. It's, think about it, we have 20 million plus, veterans and active military, and then we have their families. And I looked at it and I said, okay, if you're coming home to Thanksgiving dinner and hanging out with grandma, does she want to talk to the first responder and public safety person and hear about what they're doing, or does she want to hear about somebody counting their macros? It was pretty clear to me that the bigger opportunity was talking to the customers in the military affinity community. And so those were the first three really bold moves that I made, and I made them all simultaneously. And that set us up to really take advantage and capitalize down the road. And I'd say the final thing that I did for top of the funnel and building the brand is I went out and got a massive celebrity in the business. I went out and I got Joe Rogan in the business, and that was really cool. And it was a transformational element of the Killcliff story, and it was really authentic because he was already drinking our products. Yeah, he was already consuming them, so we engaged with him, and we effectively, we built a partnership around him, and so we had all these things kind of in place. It was like the field of dreams. We had products in better categories. When we look at CBD, we're serving veterans primarily, and also CrossFit athletes as well, that they're first adopters to this stuff. You have people looking for ways to reduce anxiety, to reduce pain, to manage their mental health and physical well-being, and they're adopting things like CBD for that. So we answered that need with the customers that are close proximity to who we are with that product. We answered the need. These guys are all pounding Monster energy drinks, so we answered that with a clean. And we were the first, as I can understand it, I think we were the very first company to come out with a clean energy slogan in 2020. We came out and said, "Clean energy, killer taste." We coined ourselves as a clean energy company, and now it's an emerging category in the energy category. Everybody comes out, and these drinks are all full of sucralose. They're all terrible for you, but they all say no calories, clean energy. But that's become the new rallying cry that everybody, and we were the first people to say it. So we did a lot of first things, and we did a lot of innovation, and we changed these elements in the business. And then that set us up to when, we started seeing it going back up. We're like, oh, this is getting exciting. Things are starting to change. Yeah. And we literally formalized our partnership with Joe at the same time that coronavirus lockdowns had hit. At the same time, we replatformed our online business, and we had these products to offer that we didn't have before. And that we had the field of dreams that we've been building, and that was the exogenous catalyst that just really got things going. And then it's kind of one of those things, when the flywheel started turning, it was good for everything. We were able to invest in things like, PR and market development, which helped bring our retail stuff along. And then we had the exposure we were getting from our burgeoning, rapidly growing online audience, create demand that we could begin to fulfill in the retail marketplace, and we could start to pick the retailers that were most aligned with us to grow with, that costs us the least amount of money to grow with. So that's kind of how it all happened. It was very much like Killcliff is an interesting story where the business, when Todd started, hit lightning in a bottle and grew rapidly. I mean, the growth they had from 2011 when they incorporated to 2015 was massive. Yeah. I mean, and then it didn't grow again until I got involved, and then I basically doubled where they were at the end of that era in about the same period of time.
Do you?
When you had schools running the business, we went crazy. When you had corporate people run the business, we died.
That's the takeaway, folks, right there. Stop hiring civilians and just find yourself a SEAL, and also take the handcuffs off of them.
Right.
Good.
So that's how, that's kind of the abbreviated history of the company. We've learned a lot along the way. It's not all been easy, and we can go into that if you'd like. So it's up to you.
I actually want to ask a question about It's interesting because you're a multi-million dollar company at this point when you're in the COO slash president role, but you're making some radical decisions, and there's you use some of the words about, like, as I hear you telling the story, you're taste testing. You said I changed the formula to change the taste. You're in packaging. You're changing distribution channels. We're going back from retail to online. I'm in marketing. I'm changing. I'm chasing down partnerships. You are, and I know obviously you and the team are doing this, but you have your fingers very much in everything. And I think there's an interesting lesson there for leaders, because when we talk about, like, the tenets of leadership is trust your people and let them do something. But if they're not doing it correctly, you have to get back into the weeds a little bit, and you had to insert yourself in. And I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were like, you know what we've been doing and the people we have in place, maybe good people, but everybody's gotten comfortable. In order to make radical departures from where we were, I'm going to get my hands dirty, and I'm going to help. I'm actually going to, as this, the COO or acting CEO, I'm actually going to get in on some packaging design. I'm actually going to get in and start taste testing. I'm going to get in and start leading the efforts to get partnerships done. Was there a piece where everybody's like, "Hey, boss, why are you so far down in the weeds?" Or were you just like, "That's just the way it's happening in order for us to become the next version of ourselves"?
No, so that's a great question. And what I would say is, so there's what I did good and what I did bad. That's the honest answer. What I looked at, like, when I looked at the business, I thought to myself, okay, I just came from software. I don't understand any of this. When I just look at it, where are the problems that I can fix categorically that can make a big difference in the growth of the business, especially from, like, a top line perspective. And so that was what I focused on. So what I took for granted is I had the smartest people in the room from investor standpoints. I mean, they are really brilliant and accomplished people, but they were looking at this. I took some sort of security in this idea, or some comfort in this idea, that these guys had already picked apart the business and pulled it apart. And the model that exists for operations, finance, all the infrastructure, the vendor partnerships were optimized. We had a CPG leader running the company before me, who had done other startups, who had been a category manager for General Mills. We had people on our board that ran massively successful, very large CPG companies, food and beverage companies. And so I came in and said, okay, what I can bring to this business right now is, I came from a SaaS software company. I know how to sell online. So I can fix the online business. That's where the company succeeded one time before, and we got away from it. So I can bring that back. I'm a consumer of products like this, so I can kind of get it. Like, I can create something that, as a team guy, you would be gravitating towards. That's authentic. I can do that. And so then I can focus on, like, finding different ways to build the top of the funnel and get some sizzle in the brand and get some visibility in the brand without spending an arm and a leg. I can do that. I can hustle all those things. What I didn't do is, I took for granted that there are lots of components of the business that were intact. That I had a good supply chain, that I had good terms with my different co-manufacturers, that I had, that my COGS were in good shape. I didn't really get into that stuff. I'm like, you know what? That stuff, these people have been doing this for way longer than me. They seem to be happy with it. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to worry about the stuff that's going to drive growth. And so that's kind of starting to answer your question, is like, but what I learned in this process is, while you might prioritize and sequence these things, as the leader in a company, you have got to learn. You have to be able to, and I heard somebody else say this somewhere, and I believe it to be true, especially in a small business, it's kind of like the SEAL teams, right? You have to know how to do everyone else's job. You might not do their job, but you need to know how to do it. And you need to know what good looks like and what bad looks like. And I didn't understand what bad looks like in certain areas of the business. And I improved the bottom line during that period of growth that you were discussing by like 60%. But I could have improved it even more. I could have improved it by like 90% if I'd known how, like, what I should be looking for. And I was a first time CEO, so I just didn't know. And I learned, that's one of the things I learned is, like, if you're in this role, like, you, I'm not a big believer in micromanagement, although I'm a big believer in KPIs, right?
Yeah.
I want to get people and I want them to be confident and creative and go out and try to win or lose based upon the direction I'm giving them. But I want them, and I want to reward them based upon success. But I don't want to somehow encumber their ability to think objectively or to be creative, right? Because that's where you get all your great ideas from. So from that perspective, I'm not a very big micromanager. But what I've learned in the process is, if you're coming into especially a smaller business, rapid growth business, you really have to take the time to understand every single element of your P&L, every single element above the line too. You have to look at your gross to net and what happens there and why that happens, and if it's happening optimally for your business. Because once you understand that, you can then be in have an intelligent, informed decision on, are you incenting people the right way, and are the people that are managing those aspects of the business doing a good job for you? So I made a mistake at Killcliff where we were being mismanaged in certain areas, and I didn't know it, and it took me time to figure that out. And so I've had to go back, even though I've done all this great stuff for the brand and driven growth, to get the business, to its optimal potential. I've had to go back and learn all those things that I didn't learn initially and get really good at those. And then one of the big things I learned along the way is, in a leadership position in a rapidly growing brand, obviously you're making investments, you're driving growth, you're trying to make, it's always tough. There's always opportunity cost to every decision and where you put your resources. But ultimately, at the end of the day, and I think this has been something that was exacerbated in the lockdown environment, is you're giving direction, you're incenting collaboration, you're getting people that are specializing in roles. For me, I'm picking work ethic and enthusiasm and learning on the job a lot of times over, like, being an expert that's fat and lazy. But you're giving people the ability to succeed in those roles. You're giving them a little bit of rope to hang themselves and creativity, but you're holding the KPIs. That's all really, really good. But one of the things, and I'm going to make a statement, you're only as good at the end of the day as what you'll tolerate. And that's where it gets down to personnel and investment decisions in the business. And that was something, honestly, as a SEAL, I have a high tolerance for pain, and I can do a lot. And sometimes I'll tolerate a lot because I know I can pick up the slack, and I know that, it's, it's not the appropriate time for me to address something for a particular reason, because there's something else I'm trying to accomplish. But what I realized is that in order for a company to really succeed and really operate well, and for people to it's more than incentives, it's what you'll tolerate. And I think we had the lockdowns, we had people working from home, you have people hustling, the environment's changed. And I just look at retrospect over the growth trajectory. There's sometimes I had a hard time figuring out if my person was the right person, because we were growing so fast. So I didn't know where my inefficiencies were. Part of that's because I didn't understand every element of the business. So if I were to go back and go through that, that whole surge again we were talking about, I would have been more aggressive in making structural changes to the business as we were going through the growth. I was looking at it as going through this massive growth phase. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to touch this because things are working.
Yeah.
And we're moving, even though I got some personality clashes here, or I'm having, I'm not getting what I want out of this person, but the aggregate impact is everything seems to be going the right way. So it's kind of like you're playing the like pixie sticks or something. It's like, well, if I remove this one, am I gonna, is it worth the risk?
Yeah, that's a good analogy, right? That's a good analogy. Pull out the pixie. Are they all going to collapse?
Right. And so that's a struggle that, especially in growth, that's a decision I really struggled with, because I was like, man, I'm killing it right here, but am I? Like, could I do better? But I don't know, because if I take it away, I'm gonna do worse. And what I learned, and I learned it a lot over like the last year and a half, is like, you have to make those decisions fast, and you have to own those decisions. And you cannot, even if you're getting like great success, think about a sports franchise. Like, you might have like the most talented wide receiver in the game, but at some point you can't tolerate their shenanigans. At some point if they don't, because that hurts your morale. It crushes other people's their work ethic. So so there's a lot that I've learned along the way, and this is really, I did kind of like a politician. I'd answer your question directly. I just kind of scoot around like key learnings, but I think that
all right, we'll edit this to be shorter. We'll edit your answer so it's like super short and concise.
Yeah, that's great. I made mistakes, and I didn't focus on everything. I focused on the things that I think I could have the most impact on today. And then I put up with stuff I shouldn't have put up with. And I could have had a better organization than I had if I learned more, and then if I put up with less.
I really like that. It's not that you need to be an expert, but you just need to know what right looks like and what wrong looks like. And that's your measure of your partners or your subordinates or your peers' performance, right?
Right.
Sometimes you can't put your finger on it. You're like, I can't tell you what you're doing wrong. I can just tell you it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Right. A little bit of a business instinct to that.
Yeah. That's it. That's a big thing you learn, and you can't just stay in your comfort zone. Like, it was easy for me to do marketing and sales all day long. Like, that was stuff I know for my entire career, but getting into ops and finance and going down the rabbit hole in those areas and supply chain, that was just, it was easier for me to assume that things were okay than to go tackle them and see if I could make them better.
When you are trying to learn and you have experts working for you and you're trying to go learn about something in finance, or you're trying to get savvy on some part of the P&L you really didn't know before, and you're trying to go to your subordinates and be like, hey, I need to know more about this because I need to make a data-informed decision. Is there a balancing act? Is there like a level of diplomacy or humility that you have to bring so that you're not appearing to be a micromanager, but you're also trying to tell them, like, listen, I need to know about your job and how well you're doing so I can know if I need to make a decision. And is there a little bit of a strategy to how you have those how you start to dip your fingers into some realm where you're not an expert?
Yeah, there probably is. Maybe you have one.
Yeah, no.
I would tell you I do a couple things. One is I'm very collegial, right? Like I always ask. It doesn't matter who it is in the company. It doesn't matter if it's my new employee who's starting out, who has a very, very finite, small role in what they're doing. It's very focused, or somebody who's got a lot more responsibility. I always ask for their recommendation. I always say, look, walk me through this, and then I want to hear your recommendations. And then I ask a bunch of questions. Sometimes I find something that they hadn't looked at, or when we unpack it, the recommendation changes. But oftentimes I really want to hear what people think, regardless of what their role is in the organization. And so that's how I do it. I approach it, and I oftentimes will understand something, and I've deferred a lot. I definitely defer a lot if a person has expertise and they convince me in a compelling way that the way they're looking at their recommendation is the best one. But I always, I think you have to ask people what they think. One thing that really, really frustrates me is, and this happens a lot when you're working with outside the business with investors or board members or whatever. Not really board members so much, but when people don't ask you what you think, right? Like, give me an opinion. I want people to ask me questions about the brand. I want people to ask me things I would do better, or things I do different, or things that are really working, or things that we've done in the past that haven't worked. When I'm working with new folks that are somehow involved in the brand. And likewise, I do the same with my employees. I want to know what they think, and I want them to be honest with me, and I don't want them to be scared of giving me an answer they think that I don't want to hear. I want to hear what they have to say, even if I don't like it. And I respect that. And so I think that, I create a culture where I'm always good to my people. I always try to support and build my people up. And then I always ask for their opinions. Like, I really want to know. Now, I might not go with their opinion. I developed what I've done along the way, especially being, when I started this journey 5 years ago, I was totally new to this industry. I'd never done anything like it. Yeah. I started building relationships with people outside the organization with experience. So when I'm looking at costs in our cost of goods, or I'm looking at packaging, or I'm looking at, freight, I have people now that I've built relationships with where I can call them. And I get, guys that are
Wow.
SVP of ops at different companies that are not
Yeah.
competing with us and say, hey, look, I got this scenario and it looks like this. This is how I'm thinking about it. Is this right or wrong? Or have you done it differently? So I've created like a peer network
Yeah.
and worked across the industry. So now I can I have this, like, I can figure out, like, at a company our size, is this something that looks right or it should look different? And then I can find out from my people internally what their recommendations are. And then I kind of synthesize the two and come up with my decisions, like the things I want us to do and prioritize.
That's awesome. That's really insightful. Last question. You've been really big on collaborations, like the Joe Rogan thing, some of the MMA stuff, and Israel Adesanya. And I know last year you guys inked a deal with the Braves to be the only energy drink served in Truist Bank in the Braves ballpark. What's next? Like, where do you go from here to continue to take that brand? I mean, obviously you wouldn't call yourselves in the same space as Monster and Red Bull, but to the average consumer, they're like, oh, energy drinks are energy drinks. But so you guys have done a good job of separating yourselves as the clean energy drink, right? And the CBD piece. What's next for you guys to differentiate or to grow or to take market share or just get a new target audience?
Well, I think there's a few things that are kind of really out there for us, right? So we have some really interesting partnerships, and you could argue right now, like, do we need more to grow? No, not really. I mean, we have a lot. We have a baseball team. I don't know if you know this, but we have the largest mixed martial arts team in the world, and
I did not.
Fight Club. Yeah. So back in June of last year, we took over the naming rights of a professional sports team called Sanford MMA.
Yeah.
And we rebranded it as Killcliff Fight Club. So now we have a gym in Florida with 80 professional fighters. And I mean, these are the people who, I don't know how closely you follow mixed martial arts, but Michael Chandler trains in the gym. Gilbert Burns trains in the gym. Robbie Lawler is one of the head coaches. Henry Hooft is a head coach. Logan Storley from Bellator is in the gym. So we have multiple champs, multiple titles. And so we have this mass. We created a professional fight team, and mixed martial arts is the fastest growing sport in the world. There's I think they boast somewhere around 800 million global fans, and they give you a frame of reference. I think soccer's around 1 billion. So it's pretty big. We were able to do a couple of really innovative things with those guys. They support us in raising money for Navy SEAL Foundation. So that's a really cool thing. Two is, if you look at where our core customers are, military affinity audience, energy drink consumers, CBD, mixed martial arts is ground zero. You look at the Octagon at Bellator and UFC, it's Monster Energy, it's CBD MD, that's ground zero for it. So for a company our size to get into that type of arena, it's really, really expensive. It's not something that you can just do. You have to get quite a bit bigger and have a lot more scale before you can pull something like that off. Or you just have to have like super rich investors that want to buy it. And so what we were able to do is we actually rebranded a gym and made it Killcliff Fight Club. So now every fight on the weekends, listen to the announcers. They're talking about, this guy trains at Killcliff. This person's from Killcliff. We have all this PR that we get on a weekly basis. You can just look Killcliff Fight Club. Every week there's article after article after article written about it. So we created this PR machine by taking over the naming rights of the gym. And so I bring that up because it's a really cool thing that we're doing, but like, that's our fastest growing audience too, consumer audiences. We're like, we're doing so well in that audience as well. And if you look at, like, when we brought on Joe Rogan and he started working with us, one of the things that happened to us is we got spread really, really thin. Joe has this, you can imagine Joe. His audience is so vast and diverse that it started really throwing off our algorithms, because it used to be our algorithm was like all a military dude or all a CrossFitter. But next thing you know, we start getting just the wildest group of people ever. And it became really hard for us to efficiently market. So we kind of had to cut it away and say, okay, what are things, if you create a Venn diagram, like, and Joe Rogan's the center of that, like, what are those overlapping circles that fill that space? And that's where we need to go after as a brand. And that's what we did. And that brought a lot of focus into everything and helped us really build the business. So So when you look at like the next thing for Killcliff, a lot of it's execution about what we've already, like the last few years, we've been acquiring assets, we've been innovating products. We really, really have, now we're really focused on streamlining the business. And really, we noticed over the last few years, there's kind of a change in the investor climate in private equity, and we were traditionally a private equity funded business. We are no longer. We want to be a sustainable entity, so we made the steps over the last year to be completely sustainable. Driving our own manifest destiny and our own, driving bottom line to reinvest in growth. So we made a really market change starting about a year ago to instead of chasing top line, which is all the stuff you described earlier. We looked at the shifting landscape and the looming recession and all these things and said we need to chase bottom line now. So we made market shifts in our business that chase bottom line, and actually starting this year, the last 2 months have been the best bottom line months consecutively in company history.
Wow.
But it took literally 9 months of work to re-engineer for bottom line. And that's been, so when we look at the future, we're looking for really, really cool, sustainable growth. You're going to continue to see us pushing the envelope online. We want to maximize brand partnerships. We do have some new collaborations coming out. That's been a really good thing for us. We have another collaboration coming out with Joe Rogan, and there's another piece to it too that's really interesting that I'll wait till we get closer to reveal. But it's really leveraging the assets we've already built to drive our business. And then as we look at our product portfolio, you'll see us kind of double down on our top SKUs and then reintroduce new flavors in those lines as a means to kind of those are great product portfolios. We want to continue to make them fresh and interesting to consumers. So we're really interested in LTOs. Like one of the mistakes I made is limited time offers.
Got it.
So as we're driving the brand, one of the mistakes I made early on is every new thing I created, I'm like, in perpetuity, let's go. Yeah. And that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to bring out new limited offers, test them, see how they work, and then decide what you're going to keep and what you're going to get rid of. So we ended up having a almost too complex of array of flavors, and so we've been re-engineering that and focused on our top performers, which is good for everybody, and then reintroducing new flavors and limited options. So you're going to see some of that from us, and then I think ultimately you're going to see us move into additional form factors. Right now we're all in cans. We have cans. Yep. So you'll probably start to see some other stuff from us, powders, liquids, liquid gels, stuff like that. To really double down. We have a really compelling offering from the ingredient and clean product perspective, and we could do more to promote that. Clean energy, like what is that? A lot of people just think it's no calories and sucralose, just no sugar, but it's artificial ingredients. We don't have artificial ingredients. We have natural ingredients, and you'll see us promoting that and trying to find like the balance in our company between being cool, hip with lots of sizzle and educating a consumer, which we've not done as well of over the last few years. We could do more work in educating the consumer and the value of our products. I mean, most people don't know there are Ignite energy drink consumers for Killcliff, that it's like having a clean energy drink and liquid IV together. I mean, it's amazing hydration properties in that drink, which is very counterintuitive because most energy drinks you think dehydrate you. Ours doesn't. Ours helps you hydrate. So
that's a good pitch, man.
So
it's almost as if you know the product.
There's a lot to come from Killcliff, and you'll see us continue to be who we are, more of what you see. But we've built such a nice arsenal of partnerships and assets for the brand that now we're really focused on getting the most out of them, executing on them, because there's so much upside, and we've only just scratched the surface with those partnerships and relationships. So instead of trying to just keep running and doing so much, you start to beat your head against the wall. We're taking a step back and saying, hey, we want sustainable, profitable growth in this brand. We're achieving that, and we want to really make the partnerships that we have stick and be really valuable. And so we're focused on that. And then we want to continue to build products and form factors that meet the usage occasions of our customers. And our customers represent a vast audience that we're barely scratching the surface on. So we're going to keep going deeper and deeper into those verticals that we're seeing a lot of traction.
I know you guys are putting out some really good content as well. So check them out, killcliff.com, on social media at Killcliff. That's traditional spelling of Killcliff.
Killcliff.com, best place. Follow us on social media at Killcliff on pretty much every handle. And let us know if you want to help the brand out. We have a new micro influencer program. We call it Taste Buds. I think it's awesome. So
I like it.
You could be a taste bud today, man. Just hit us up, DM us, and let us know you want to be one.
That's awesome, dude. All right. Well, hey, thank you for what you guys are doing for the veteran community. Obviously, I take a personal appreciation of what you guys are doing for the SEAL community. I've been a benefactor of the Navy SEAL Foundation's generosity before. So thank you guys for what you keep doing for that and for the veteran community writ large. John, thanks for joining us today, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, John. I appreciate your time, man.